One P-47 vs 48 Japanese fighters. They didn't believe it until it happened at 10:30 a.m. On October 11, 1943, Lieutenant Colonel Neil Kirby climbed to 28.000 FT over Waiwak, New Guinea, leading 3 P-47 Thunderbolts toward the most heavily defended Japanese air base in the Southwest Pacific. Watching radar reports confirm 40 enemy fighters scrambling to intercept his tiny formation. 32 years old, 4 months in combat, 22 pilots already dead. The Japanese had stationed more than 200 fighters at Waiwak, and American intelligence estimated that half of them could be airborne in under 10 minutes. Most fighter pilots in the Pacific flew the Lock. He'd P-38 Lightning, twin engines, long range, proven killer. The P-47 Thunderbolt was different. It weighed 8 tons, fully loaded. Pilots called it the Jug, short for Juggernaut. Some said it flew like one, too. When Kirby's 348th Fighter Group arrived in New Guinea in June 1943 with P-47s, the reaction was immediate. Too heavy, too slow in turns. Wrong airplane for the Pacific. The Japanese flew Zeros and Oscars. Light, agile, built for dog fighting at low altitude. The P-47 couldn't match them in a turning fight. General George Kenney needed every fighter he could get, but he had doubts. The P-38 dominated Japanese fighters. Why risk pilots in an unproven aircraft? Kirby requested permission to prove the Thunderbolt could work. Kenney gave him 3 months. The first missions were reconnaissance flights. High altitude, no contact. Kirby was studying. He knew the P-47 had one advantage the Japanese couldn't match: speed in the dive. The turbo supercharger gave the Thunderbolt maximum power at 27,000 FT. In thin air above 30,000 FT, it remained fast while Japanese fighters struggled to climb. Kirby developed a tactic: climb high. Spot the enemy below. Dive at maximum speed. Fire the 850 caliber machine guns. Use the speed from the dive to zoom back to altitude before the enemy could react. Never stay low. Never turn with Japanese fighters. Hit and climb always. He briefed his pilots on the rules. Altitude is life. Speed is survival. Never make a second pass at low altitude. The Japanese would be waiting. On September 4, 1943, Kirby opened his score. He spotted a Japanese bomber with 2 fighter escorts at low altitude. He dove from 25,000 FT. The closure rate was over 400 mph. He destroyed the bomber and 1 fighter before the Japanese knew he was there. 10 days later, he caught a Mitsubishi reconnaissance plane and shot it down, but the losses continued. Between August and September, the 348th Fighter Group lost 11 pilots. The P-38 squadrons were scoring victories with fewer casualties. Pressure mounted on Kenney to replace Kirby's Thunderbolts with Lightnings. Kirby needed a demonstration, something undeniable. He requested permission to lead a fighter sweep over Waiwak, free roaming patrol, no escort duty, hunt for Japanese fighters, and force them into combat. Kenney approved one mission. If Kirby's tactics failed, the P-47 experiment in the Pacific would end. The morning of October 11th was clear. Perfect visibility. Kirby selected 3 pilots for the mission: Captain William Dunham, Captain George Moore, Major Raymond Gallagher, all experienced, all skeptical about what they were being asked to do. If you want to see how Kirby's diving tactic turned out against overwhelming odds, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten World War II stories. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Kirby. The flight reached Waiwak at 10:30. They cruised at 28,000 FT. 5 miles below them, Japanese fighters sat on 4 different airfields: Borum, Dagwa, Waiwak, but more than 50 aircraft visible on the runways. Japanese radar had tracked them from 50 mi out. Lieutenant Colonel Tama Tierney commanded the Japanese 14th Senti. He ordered fighters airborne and climbed into his own Oscar to lead the intercept. Within minutes, more than 36 fighters were climbing to engage 4 American aircraft. The odds were 9-1. Kirby was about to violate every tactical principle of aerial warfare and create a record that would stand for over a year. At 11:15, Kirby spotted movement. One aircraft a mile below off to the left. Lone fighter heading toward the coast. The other 3 Thunderbolts maintained formation at altitude. Kirby instructed them to drop external fuel tanks. With the tanks gone, they had roughly 40 minutes of fuel remaining. Enough to fight, not enough to stay long. Kirby rolled into a dive, the altimeter unwound. 26-0. 00-22-0. 00-18-0-0-0. The lone fighter grew larger in his gun sight. Red circles on the wings, Japanese Oscar. Nakajima Kai 43, the pilot hadn't seen him. Kirby closed to 300 wide D. He pressed the trigger. 850 caliber machine guns fired simultaneously. 200 rounds in 3 seconds. The Oscar's fuel tank ruptured. Fire erupted from the engine cowling. The fighter rolled inverted and fell toward the ocean trailing black smoke. What Kirby didn't know that Oscar was flown by Lieutenant Colonel Tamiya Teranishi, commander of the Japanese 14th Senti, the officer who had scrambled every available fighter to intercept the American formation. Teranishi's last radio transmission came at 11:25. Japanese records would later confirm his death. Kirby climbed back to 26-0, 00 FD. 1 kill, mission accomplished, time to go home. He scanned the sky for his wingmen. All 3 Thunderbolts were in formation. Major Gallagher spotted another fighter near the coast. Single aircraft heading out to sea. But before they could pursue, Captain Dunham's voice came over the radio. Bogies, multiple contacts coming from the coast. Kirby looked east. The formation was impossible to miss. 12 twin-engine bombers in tight formation. 36 fighters surrounding them. Oscars, Tonys, Kawasaki Kai 61s, maybe some Zeros. All at 15-0, 00 FD, all heading directly toward Wewak. The tactical situation was clear. 4 American fighters, low fuel, versus 48 Japanese aircraft, fresh, full ammunition. The mission was complete. Intelligence gathered, 1 enemy fighter destroyed, every training manual said withdraw. Every experienced pilot would have turned for home. Kirby had other ideas. The P-47's strength wasn't maneuverability. It was speed and firepower. His tactic required altitude advantage. He had it. 11-0, 00 FT above the enemy formation. The Thunderbolts could dive through the formation at over 400 mph. Fire. Zoom back to altitude before the Japanese could react. Hit them once, disappear into the clouds to the south, but there were risks, massive risks. If anything went wrong during the dive, they'd be trapped at low altitude with no energy to climb, surrounded by 48 enemy fighters. The P-47 couldn't turn with an Oscar, couldn't outrun a Tony in level flight at 10-0 feet. At low altitude, the Thunderbolt's advantages disappeared. At low altitude, 4 Americans would be easy targets. Kirby made his decision. He gave the signal to attack. The 4 Thunderbolts rolled into steep dives. The airspeed indicators climbed past 300 knots, 350, 400. The Japanese formation grew rapidly larger. Kirby aimed for the leading edge of the fighter escort. His finger moved to the trigger. The Japanese pilots saw them too late, 4 dark shapes plummeting from above. By the time the escorts reacted, Kirby was already firing. He selected a Tony. The convergence point for his 8 machine guns was 300 wide D. At that range, the combined firepower was devastating. The Tony's wings separated. The fighter spun toward the jungle below. Kirby shifted to another target. Oscar port side of the bomber formation. 3-second burst. The Oscar exploded. Kirby pulled hard on the stick. The Thunderbolt speed carried it through the formation and out the other side. He zoomed back to altitude, checked his 6. Clear. Looked for his wingman. Moore was climbing. Gallagher was nowhere visible. Dunham's voice came over the radio. Urgent. 2 Tonys on his tail, closing fast. Kirby spotted them. Dunham's P-47 was in a shallow dive. 2 Japanese fighters in pursuit 3-0. 00 FT behind him. They had altitude, they had position. In 30 seconds, they'd be in firing range. Kirby rolled, inverted, and dove. His 3rd and 4th kills were about to come in rapid succession, But somewhere in the chaos below, more than 30 Japanese fighters were regrouping, and they were all looking for him. Kirby's dive angle was 70 degrees, nearly vertical. The airspeed climbed past 420 knots. The Thunderbolt shook. The two Tonys chasing Dunham were focused forward. They didn't see Kirby until his tracers crossed their flight path. The first Tony pilot tried to brake left. Too late, Kirby's burst caught him in the engine and cockpit. The fighter nosed over and fell trailing smoke. The second Tony pilot reacted faster. He broke hard right and dove. Kirby followed. The Tony was more maneuverable, but Kirby had speed. 450 mph, closing fast. The Tony pilot made a mistake. He tried to turn. At that speed, the G-forces were brutal. His turn radius widened. Kirby cut inside. Range decreased 2000 ft. 1,500. He fired. The Tony's tail section disintegrated. The fighter tumbled end over end into the jungle below. 6 kills, 15 minutes of combat, but the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Kirby looked up. The sky was full of Japanese fighters. Oscars and Tonys were diving from all directions, more than 30 enemy aircraft converging on his position. He had altitude again, but his fuel was critical. Maybe 20 minutes remaining, not enough to fight his way out. He needed to break contact now. Kirby spotted a cloud layer to the south. Scattered clouds between 2000 and 8000 FD. Perfect cover. He called his flight, disengage, head for the clouds, rendezvous on the south side. All 3 wingmen acknowledged. The 4 Thunderbolts dove for the cloud layer. Japanese fighters followed, but the P-47's dive speed was superior. By the time the Oscars reached the clouds, the Americans were gone. Kirby led his flight south through the clouds, then turned west toward Port Moresby. The Japanese didn't pursue beyond Waiwak's defensive perimeter. The flight landed at Port Moresby at 12:45, 90 minutes after takeoff. Each pilot climbed out and inspected his aircraft. Dunham's P-47 had bullet holes in the tail section, minor damage. Moore's aircraft was untouched. Gallagher had returned separately. His aircraft showed no damage either. The intelligence officer debriefed them immediately. The gun camera film would take hours to develop, but the pilot's reports were consistent. 6 confirmed kills for Kirby. Moore claimed 1 probable. Gallagher claimed 1 probable. Total enemy aircraft destroyed, 6 confirmed, 2 probable. 0 American losses. Word spread fast. By evening, every pilot at Port Moresby knew what happened over Waiwak. 6 kills in 1 mission against odds of 9-1, using an aircraft most pilots considered unsuitable for the Pacific Theater. General Kenney received the report at 5th Air Force Headquarters. He immediately drafted a recommendation for the Medal of Honor. The citation described the action in detail: 4 fighters against 48 enemy aircraft, mission completed, reconnaissance objective achieved, then voluntary engagement against overwhelming odds, 6 enemy fighters destroyed, 1 American pilot saved from certain death. All 4 aircraft returned safely. The gun camera footage arrived 2 days later. Every kill confirmed. The film showed Kirby's first Oscar burning as it fell toward the ocean. The 2 Tonys he destroyed while saving Dunham. The 3 fighters he shot down during the initial attack on the bomber formation. Frame-by-frame documentation of a record-breaking mission. Kirby's tactic had worked. The high-altitude dive, the speed advantage, the zoom climb to safety. Everything he predicted came true. The P-47 Thunderbolt could compete with Japanese fighters. It just required different tactics, different thinking, different leadership. The record stood as the most enemy aircraft destroyed by an American fighter pilot in a single mission. 6 confirmed kills. The previous record was 4. Kirby nearly doubled it. The next pilot to exceed his achievement wouldn't do so until January 1945, when William Shomo shot down 7 Japanese aircraft in 6 minutes over the Philippines. On September 23rd, Kirby had been promoted to full colonel. On October 11th, he proved the promotion was justified. By November, his total stood at 12 victories. The P-47 experiment in the Pacific was no longer an experiment. It was proven doctrine, but Kirby's war wasn't over. 5th Air Force needed his tactical expertise. In November 1943, he transferred to Headquarters Staff, Fighter Command, training new pilots, developing tactics, sharing his knowledge. The logical assignment for a colonel with his experience, but Kirby had other plans. He requested permission to continue flying combat missions. Kenny approved with one condition. Kirby would balance staff duties with occasional combat flights, not full-time combat, too valuable to lose. The arrangement suited both men. For 3 months it worked perfectly. Then came March 5, 1944. Between November 1943 and March 1944, Kirby lived 2 lives, staff officer by day, fighter pilot whenever possible. The arrangement created tension. His administrative duties required full attention, strategic planning, tactical development, training programs, but combat was his calling. Every time he heard fighters taking off, he wanted to be in the cockpit. His superiors understood. General Kenny encouraged a rivalry between top aces in the Pacific. Richard Bong flew P-38 Lightnings. Tommy McGuire flew P-38s. Both were accumulating kills faster than anyone else in the theater. Bong had 21 victories by January 1944. McGuire had 19. Kirby had 12. The rivalry wasn't personal. It was strategic. Kenny used competition to motivate his best pilots. The publicity helped recruitment. Newspaper stories about American aces boosted morale at home. War bond drives featured fighter pilots. Hollywood made movies about them. The rivalry served multiple purposes, but there was a cost. Top aces felt pressure to increase their scores. More missions, more risks, more chances to die. McGuire would be killed in January 1945 with 38 victories. Bong would survive the war with 40 kills, but die test flying a jet fighter in August 1945. Kirby would die first. His aircraft carried a personal touch. Every P-47 he flew bore the name Fiery Ginger. The nickname came from his wife, Virginia. Red hair, strong personality. They married in 1937 at Randolph Field in Texas. She gave him 3 sons, Robert, John, Kenneth, all born before the war. By March 1944, Kirby flew Fiery Ginger 4, his 4th aircraft with that name. Republic P-47D2, serial number 4,002, 175,908. 8 150 caliber machine guns, 2005, 100 lb of armor plate. Pratt & Whitney R-2008, 100 engine producing 2,000 horsepower. Maximum speed 360 mph in level flight, 430 in a dive. The Thunderbolt could absorb incredible damage. German ace Heinspar later said the P-47 could take an astounding amount of lead and had to be handled very carefully. Multiple pilots returned from missions with hundreds of bullet holes. Engine damage, control surface damage, missing sections of wing. The aircraft kept flying. That durability saved lives, but it couldn't save everyone. Kirby's victory total climbed slowly. On January 9, 1944, he shot down 2 fighters over Waiwak. His score reached 21, equal to Bong, but Bong scored again on January 26th, then twice more in early February. By March 5th, Bong had 24 confirmed victories, 3 ahead of Kirby. The pressure was building, not official pressure. Kenny never ordered pilots to take unnecessary risks, but the competition created its own momentum. Every pilot knew the score. Every mission could change the standings. Every day mattered. March 5th started like dozens of other days. Clear weather over New Guinea. Multiple fighter patrols scheduled. Kirby wasn't assigned to any of them. He was scheduled for staff meetings, planning sessions, routine headquarters work. But Captain Samuel Blair and Captain William Dunham were flying a patrol over Waiwak. Routine fighter sweep, looking for targets of opportunity. Kirby made a decision. He would join them, 3 aircraft instead of 2. Better odds, more firepower. He signed out Fiery Ginger 4, performed the pre-flight inspection, started the engine, taxied to the runway, took off at 400 hours local time. The flight plan was simple: fly to Wewak, patrol the airspace above Japanese airfields, intercept any enemy aircraft attempting to land or take off, standard fighter sweep, duration approximately 2 hours, return before dark. Kirby had flown this mission dozens of times. Nothing unusual. Nothing particularly dangerous. By 1,700 hours, they were over Wewak, altitude 22,000 ft, perfect visibility. Below them, Japanese aircraft were active. Bombers returning from missions, fighters on patrol, transport aircraft moving supplies, rich target environment, exactly what they wanted. At 1,720, Kirby spotted movement. 3 Kawasaki Ki-48 bombers, twin-engine light bombers approaching Dogwa Airfield for landing. Vulnerable, low altitude, low speed, perfect targets. He called the attack. All 3 Thunderbolts rolled into diving attacks. What happened next would take less than 5 minutes and cost Kirby everything. The 3 Thunderbolts due from 22,000 ft. Kirby targeted the lead bomber. Blair took the second. Dunham went for the third. The closure rate was extreme, 400 mph. The Ki-48 pilots never had a chance to evade. Kirby opened fire at 800 yards. His 8 machine guns converged on the bomber's fuselage. The Ki-48 shuddered under the impact. Pieces of aluminum tore away from the wings. The bomber rolled left and descended toward the ocean, but Kirby didn't see it crash. The speed of his dive carried him past the target too quickly. Blair's bomber exploded in midair, direct hit on the fuel tanks. Dunham's target went into a spin and crashed into the jungle near Dagwa. 2 confirmed kills, immediate, obvious. Kirby's target was different. It was damaged descending but still flying. The qualification for a confirmed kill required witness destruction, crash, explosion, complete structural failure. Kirby made a decision. He would make another pass, verify the kill, ensure the bomber went down. He called his wingman, told them he was going back. They acknowledged, continued climbing to altitude. Kirby turned back toward the coast. This was the moment everything changed. Every tactical principle Kirby taught his pilots said, climb, get altitude, never stay low after an attack. The Japanese would scramble fighters. They would be waiting. A second pass at low altitude handed every advantage to the enemy. Kirby knew this. He taught this. He wrote the doctrine, but he made the turn anyway. At Dagua Airfield, Japanese controllers watched 3 American fighters attack their bombers. They immediately scrambled the alert flight. 5 Nakajima Ki-43 Oscars from the 77th Senti took off within 90 seconds. Warrant Officer Kyuichi Maitomo led the flight. Sergeant Hiroshi Aoyagi flew as his wingman. All 5 pilots were experienced. All 5 knew American tactics. They expected the P-47s to dive once and climb away. They didn't expect one to return. Kirby's bomber was 3 miles off the coast. Still airborne, still descending. He closed from behind. Range decreased. 10 YD 800-600. He fired. The tracers walked into the bomber's left engine. Fire erupted. The Ki-48 rolled, inverted, and hit the ocean. Kirby's 22nd victory, his last. The Oscar pilot saw him immediately. Single P-47, low altitude, slow airspeed, vulnerable. Maitoma and Aoyagi dove on him from above. Kirby's airspeed was below 300 mph. Not enough energy to climb quickly, not enough altitude to dive away. The tactical situation was reversed. The advantages he always maintained were gone. He pushed the throttle forward. The R-2008 100 engine responded. 2000 horsepower, but acceleration takes time. The Oscars were already in firing position. Range 400 YD 300 200. Maitomo opened fire. His machine guns were synchronized. 2 Type 89-7. 7 mm guns in the cowling. 2 Ho 100-312. 7 mm guns in the wings. Aoyagi fired simultaneously. The rounds hit fiery ginger forest tail section first, then the fuselage. Several bullets penetrated the cockpit. Kirby was hit. How many times remains unknown. What is known? The damage was catastrophic. Control cables severed, hydraulic lines ruptured. The Thunderbolt's legendary durability meant nothing at close range. Too much damage. Too many critical systems destroyed. The P-47 nosed over. Kirby fought the controls. The aircraft was dying. Altitude 1,500 ft decreasing. He had seconds to decide. Ride it down or bail out. He chose to bail out, released his harness, opened the canopy. The slipstream tore him from the cockpit. His parachute deployed, but the altitude was insufficient for proper deployment. The canopy opened partially, not enough to slow his descent adequately. He drifted toward the jungle below. Local villagers witnessed what happened next. The partially inflated parachute tangled in a tree canopy. Kirby hung suspended, alive, wounded, unable to free himself. The bullet wounds were severe. Blood loss was rapid. He died in the trees above the jungle floor alone, within sight of the airfield where he scored his greatest victory 5 months earlier. Dunham and Blair circled the area. They saw the parachute saw movement, called for rescue, but Waiwak was deep in Japanese-held territory. No rescue was possible. They remained until fuel forced them to leave. They returned to Sidor Airfield, filed their reports. Kirby was listed as missing in action. His wife, Virginia, received the telegram 2 weeks later. The search began immediately. 5th Air Force sent reconnaissance flights over the crash site. Pilots reported seeing wreckage in the jungle near Dagwa. Dense canopy, no clearings, no way to reach the site from the air. Japanese forces controlled the entire area. Ground rescue was impossible. Kirby's loss hit the 348 Fighter Group hard. He had led them since October 1942, trained them, developed their tactics, proved the P-47 could succeed in the Pacific. His death seemed impossible. Pilots who survived months of combat develop a sense of invincibility. Kirby had survived 70 missions, shot down 22 enemy aircraft, led the most successful P-47 unit in the theater. He wasn't supposed to die, but he violated his own rule. Never make a second pass at low altitude. The rule existed for a reason. It was based on tactical reality. Low altitude eliminated the P-47's advantages. Japanese fighters excelled at low-altitude combat. Every pilot in the 348th knew this. Kirby taught them. Yet on March 5th, he forgot or he chose to ignore it. The result was the same. The official investigation examined the circumstances. 3 witnesses, Blair, Dunham, Japanese records captured after the war. All accounts agreed on the basic facts. Kirby made a second pass. He was attacked from above. He was hit. He bailed out. He died in the jungle. The investigation concluded with a single observation. Pilot error, tactical violation, preventable loss. But there was context, the pressure to increase his score, the competition with Bong, the need to verify kills for official credit. Kirby's 21st victory had been his last confirmed kill before March 5th. 2 months without scoring, Bong was pulling ahead. Maguire was close behind. The unofficial race to break Eddie Rickenbacker's World War I record of 26 victories was intensifying. Kirby felt it. Everyone knew it. The second pass wasn't just about confirming a kill. It was about staying competitive. Kenny understood. He had encouraged the rivalry, used it to motivate his best pilots, generated publicity for the war effort, but he never intended for it to cost lives. After Kirby's death, he reconsidered the policy. The competition continued, but the pressure eased. Bong would eventually reach 40 victories. Maguire would reach 38. Both would die within months of each other. Bong in a test flight accident. Maguire shot down over the Philippines. The cost of being the best was often fatal. Kirby's Medal of Honor had been presented 3 months before his death, January 1944. General Douglas MacArthur personally conducted the ceremony at his headquarters in Brisbane, Australia. The citation described the October 11th mission in detail. 4 fighters against 48 enemy aircraft, 6 confirmed kills, 1 American pilot saved, conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty. MacArthur's presentation was brief. He understood fighter pilots, understood combat, understood what Kirby had accomplished. The medal recognized extraordinary courage, but it also recognized tactical innovation. Kirby proved the P-47 could fight in the Pacific. His methods became standard doctrine. Every Thunderbolt unit in the theater used variations of his dive and zoom tactic. His legacy wasn't just 22 kills. It was showing other pilots how to survive. The 348th Fighter Group continued operations without him. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Rowland assumed full command. The group's tactics remained unchanged. High-altitude patrols, diving attacks, zoom climbs. Between June 1943 and December 1944, the 348th claimed over 170 confirmed victories. Loss rate 8 pilots. The tactics worked. Kirby's death was the exception, not the rule. His aircraft remained at the bottom of the jungle for 3 years. Fiery Ginger 4, serial number 4,275,908. The wreckage sat undisturbed through the remainder of the war, through Japan's surrender in August 1945, through the Allied occupation, through the slow process of identifying and recovering the dead. In July 1947, an Australian War Graves team finally reached the crash site. They found what remained of both pilot and aircraft. The Australian War Graves Registration Unit operated throughout the Southwest Pacific after the war. Their mission was recovery and identification. Thousands of Allied personnel remained missing. Crash sites, jungle graves, unmarked burial locations. The teams worked systematically, grid by grid, island by island. New Guinea contained hundreds of sites. The team reached Kirby's crash site in July 1947. The location was 800 FT from Dagwa Airfield. The wreckage was scattered across a small area. The P-47's engine had buried itself deep in the soil. Wing sections were identifiable. The tail section showed bullet damage, consistent with the Japanese reports. Multiple hits from 7mm and 7mm rounds. Human remains were found near the wreckage. Partial skeleton, some personal effects, dog tags were not present. The identification process relied on dental records, location, aircraft serial number. The process took time. The remains were transported to a temporary military morgue, filed with hundreds of others awaiting identification. The case number was assigned. The investigation began. 2 years passed. The backlog was enormous. Dental records had to be matched. Families contacted. Official confirmations processed. In 1949, the identification was confirmed. The remains belonged to Colonel Neil Ernest Kirby, Medal of Honor recipient. 22 confirmed victories. Killed in action March 5, 1944. His brother was also dead. Major John Gallatin Kirby Roman, 3, killed in the European theater. The family had lost both sons to the war. Virginia Kirby received notification in early 1949. The remains would be returned to the United States. She chose burial at Sparkman-Hillcrest Memorial Park Cemetery in Dallas, Texas, next to his brother. The funeral was scheduled for July 23, 1949. Full military honors. The ceremony drew significant attention. Local newspapers covered the story. Veterans attended. Fellow pilots from the 348th Fighter Group traveled to Dallas. General Kenney sent representatives. The coffin was draped with an American flag. Honor Guard, 21-gun salute, taps, the standard protocol for a fallen hero. But there was nothing standard about what Kirby accomplished. His decorations were extensive. Medal of Honor, 2 Silver Stars, 4 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 5 Air Medals, Purple Heart. Each award represented specific actions, specific missions, specific moments when he exceeded expectations. The Medal of Honor was the highest, but the Silver Stars and Distinguished Flying Crosses told a broader story. Consistent excellence, repeated courage under fire, leadership that inspired others. The medals were displayed at the ceremony, later transferred to his family, eventually donated to military museums. The Medal of Honor went to the National Museum of the United States Air Force at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. They created an exhibit, full-scale replica of a P-47 Thunderbolt painted to match Fiery Ginger. Information panels describing Kirby's tactics, his record, his death. The exhibit remains on display. In 1959, the Air Force named a training facility in his honor. Kirby Hall at Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas, his hometown. The building housed pilot training operations, fighter tactics instruction. The naming was appropriate. Kirby spent his career teaching pilots how to fight, how to survive, how to win. The building continued that mission. Arlington, Texas, where he attended high school, eventually built a memorial. The Texas Historical Commission approved a state historical marker in 2010. Life-size bronze statue information plaque located outside the public library later moved to City Plaza near City Hall. The statue shows Kirby in flight gear looking skyward. The pose captures him perfectly. Always watching, always ready, his wife Virginia outlived him by 45 years. She never remarried, raised their 3 sons alone. Robert, John, Kenneth, all 3 became pilots. All 3 died in separate aircraft accidents. Robert in 1974, John in 1977, Kenneth in 1974. The family lost 4 pilots across 3 decades. Virginia died in 1989. She was buried next to Neil at Hillrest Memorial Park. The P-47 Thunderbolt remained in service until 1955. The type was retired from active duty, but continued flying in Air National Guard units for several more years. Total production exceeded 15,000 aircraft. The Thunderbolt fought in every theater, scored thousands of victories, proved itself as both fighter and ground attack aircraft. Kirby's contribution was showing it could compete with Japanese fighters in the Pacific. Without his tactical innovation, the P-47 might have been withdrawn from the theater. Instead, it became standard equipment. The record Kirby set on October 11, 1943, stood for 15 months. 6 confirmed kills in a single mission. No other Army Air Forces pilot in the Pacific matched it until January 1945. Major William Shomo flew a P-51 Mustang over the Philippines, encountered a Japanese formation, shot down 7 aircraft in 6 minutes, the new record. But Shomo's mission was different. He attacked bombers with minimal fighter escort. Kirby attacked a formation with 3, 1 fighter superiority. The circumstances weren't comparable. The true measure of Kirby's achievement wasn't the number. It was the tactical revolution. Before June 1943, the P-47 was considered unsuitable for Pacific combat. Too heavy, too slow in turns, wrong aircraft for Japanese fighters. After Kirby's demonstration, that assessment changed. His dive and zoom tactic exploited the Thunderbolt strengths. High-altitude performance, diving speed, rugged construction, heavy firepower. Other units adopted his methods. The 58th Fighter Group transitioned to P-47s in 1944, used Kirby's tactics, achieved similar success. The 460th Fighter Squadron flew Thunderbolts throughout 1944, lower loss rates than P-38 units operating in the same area. The 348th Fighter Group continued using P-47s until early 1945. Only then did they transition to P-51 Mustangs, not because the Thunderbolt failed, because the Mustang had longer range. The statistics prove the concept. Between August 1943 and December 1944, the 348th Fighter Group claimed 177 confirmed victories, total pilot losses 15, kill ratio nearly 12 to 1. Those numbers rivaled any P-38 unit in the theater. The P-47 worked. Kirby's tactics worked. The aircraft was vindicated. His influence extended beyond the Pacific. European theater P-47 units faced different challenges. German fighters were heavily armed, trained, tactically sophisticated, but the same principles applied. Altitude advantage, diving attacks, energy management. Never get trapped in a turning fight. American pilots in Europe learned similar lessons, often independently, but Kirby proved the concept first. The cost of his success was personal: 22 victories, 70 combat missions, 5 months leading the most successful P-47 unit in the Pacific, then one tactical mistake, one violation of his own doctrine, 1 second pass at low altitude. Price was his life, the lesson was clear: tactics matter, discipline matters, one mistake can be fatal even for the best pilots. His story could have ended there, forgotten casualty of a forgotten theater, but the Medal of Honor ensured recognition. The statue in Arlington, the exhibit at Wright-Patterson, the building at Shepherd Air Force Base, physical reminders of what he accomplished, tangible proof that innovation and courage can change outcomes. But the real legacy lies in the tactical manuals. Fighter pilot training still teaches energy management, altitude advantage, boom, and zoom tactics. The terminology changed, the principles remain. Kirby didn't invent these concepts. Messer's pilots used similar tactics in the Battle of Britain, but Kirby adapted them to a different aircraft, different enemy, different environment. That adaptation saved lives. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor, hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about fighter pilots who changed warfare with innovation and courage. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer, you're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Neil Kirby doesn't disappear into silence.